Look at our political leaders. They crash them, and here comes the Trump, being a person that make no mistakes. Why this is happening? Hi, here is Markku Wilenius, the traveling futurist. Look at our political leaders. Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, and so much more. Most of these guys have been actually elected by us through a democratic process. These guys come to the power, they turn autocrats, dictators. Why and how this is happening? Let me explain. Naturally, when we look at the history of the world, there have been always authoritarian rulers. But the interesting fact is that when we are looking at the situation today, we see more and more these authoritarian rulers to come and take their place. And this is happening in a time where we have actually been democratized throughout the world, that the democratic processes have been put into the place in most of the countries, in most part of the world. So the question really is that what is the trigger that make these elected leaders that may in the beginning have good intention, that they in times turn into the tyrannies? Look at the Erdogan, look at the Urban, look at the Modi, and certainly look at the Xi Jinping, look at our not-so-friend Vladimir Putin. In all of these cases, you see that they start to harass their enemies, they crash them, they say no to democratic elected authorities, they put them into their service. All in all, it seems that everything goes around them. All their politics becomes driven by their self-interest. And that is where they turn their back to the people who have actually elected them. Isn't that a very paradoxical development? It seems that at some point they start to think themselves as being infallible, being a persons that make no mistakes. So they don't need any information feedback, because they believe that they are the ones that knows answers to any relevant question. And that is also the reason why they never give up voluntarily their power. They always stand and clench to the power to the very end. Why this is happening? Now we need to wind back. We need to understand what people are seeking when they are electing the people like these guys. Let's take example of the Donald Trump. Before he was elected, he was not much more than the guy who was known for being a TV host. Of course, to many people also he was known to be a businessman, a heir of imperium that was built by his father. He said something to the people that made him connect. Whom he was connecting? He was connecting mostly white, rather poor people that were living in areas where there was not too much hope for their future. And here comes the Trump with a very authoritarian voice, tell them that I know how to improve your life. Make all kinds of nice promises to them, and people start to believe. Why do they start to believe? Because, first of all, he's promising a nice future, but also that if you look at the personal psychology of this type of the authoritarian kind of leaders who are mostly having a lot of narcissistic features, is that they are very good in manipulating people. They know how to trigger a future expectation, a trust that people start to think that, okay, this guy can provide us a better future. Because they have seen over the years, over the decades, that whoever else they had been in the past have not really catered for them. They were looking a little bit like a messiah. They were looking, people are looking for someone that can help them to build a much better future from where they are on that moment. So this is the recipe. And when we start to observe how this actually works, this works because there is a lot of disappointment around. In fact, you take the statistics, you look at the Europe, you look at the US, you look at many other parts, you look at particularly the Russia. The fact is that a lot of those countries, even if there have been considerable amount of riches, economic progress of all kinds, these riches have mostly been drawn to the few, to rather kind of small portion of the population. The majority, or at least a very big bunch of people, feel that the last 40 years have not brought them what they were promised. Because before that time, the development was spreading much more evenly. So if you think about why this phenomenon is happening right now, why so many authoritarian leaders are popping up in all parts of the world, the reason is this: they are looking for their savior. To do something about it is not just changing the leaders. That does not necessarily help. The real solution is to change the policies, the type of the structures that build this kind of a polarizing economy. Because when you look at the statistics, the US economy is a good example. Last 40 years, nothing much good has happened to the vast middle class, and also to the workers, to the labor class. They really have been left behind in the overall progress. And that has built this kind of a existing problem where those kind of guys that see that this is their chance to manipulate, to grab to the power and keep it as long as they can actually do that. This has been their heyday. This has been their calling. They've seen their time has come and they have acted upon their observation that here is the country that needs my kind of a guy. Even if looking from outer perspective, that is not, of course, true. So to me, as a futurist, there is a clear pattern here that we can observe. The type of the development that has happened throughout the world has left a lot of people aside. Also, we know other type of the consequences, such as environmental destruction, which is also a part of this whole game, this whole way of how this capitalist society has produced this type of result, where more and more people really feel that they lag behind. But that gives us also an explanation that and recipe that if we go towards the future, there is a lot of work that we need to be done to make societies more just, more equitable, the feeling for the people that they are really a part of something bigger and that they have a role to play in the future of their country. I'm afraid that before that type of the era really begins, and I'm sure it will actually begin, but before it begins, we're gonna see this type of dictators, autocrats of all kinds, popping up here and there, giving their impossible promises, alluring people to support them. And later, they're gonna be very disappointed because all these authoritarians, what they really care about is about themselves and their own power. So they can never deliver the promises that they have made to the people that have elected them as elected leaders. Of course, in that case, there is no democratic process, but there is inherited position. The situation is, of course, different. But in that case, it even asks more from these authoritarian rulers to take care of all people in the country. And in most cases, we have seen this is not been happening. We just look at the situation in many parts of Africa, in many parts of South America as well, and Asia. Once there is a chance for these authoritarian leaders to take on, they will take it. People support, as it happened in the Brazil, for instance, and its president Jair Bolsonaro, who also was given promises that he had never kept, were able to build up his power and just go to build a future for himself rather than the future for his country. So, summarizing, there would be no autocrat leaders unless we people elect them to be in their positions. We essentially, as people and as citizens, create those leaders. But there is a context as well. So the context is that if there is been a type of development where a lot of people have been kind of felt to be the marginal in the overall development, they start to revolt against that and find solution. And in our case, the solution quite often is an autocrat, sometimes even dictator, that comes there with a false promises, grab to the power and stays with that power to the very end. To change that, we need to build much more just societies. That is the only real recipe to cure this problem of autocratic leaders. Subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends, and look for other similar videos in my channel. See you.